Kathy and Linton were making fun of Hareton for things that he can't control, like he can't read. This is because it was Heathcliff's intent to raise him in a way that made him ignorant, because he is imposing these conditions on the son of someone that he hated. So we are seeing how, I mean, it is an effective form of revenge, I guess. It doesn't mean it's ethical, not really, because they're kids and they're in being subjected to all of this, but also taking the perspective of Heathcliff being the only person of color that we have seen in this book. He's the only one that is described as a person of color overtly, and how he was treated, that it makes sense why, if he is not getting justice from the society that exists that was to blame for his marginalization to begin with, he's going to get vengeance in the ways that he can. And that also can make sense. He is recreating the same situation, the same abuse that he experienced growing up. But this time, he is actually in charge of what is happening, and it is to all of these white children. So it's like, okay, I guess that's not really decolonizing, I guess, because he's still imposing these systems of domination on people, but just weaponizing it. Okay. Mr. Heathcliff, having overheard the conversation, as well as I, smiled when he saw him go, but immediately afterwards cast a look of singular aversion on the flippant pair, who remained chattering in the doorway. The boy finding animation enough while discussing Hareton's faults and deficiencies, and relating anecdotes of his goings-on, and the girl relishing his pert and spiteful sayings without considering the ill nature they evinced. But I began to dislike more than to compassionate, using that as a verb, Linton, and to excuse his father, in some measure, for holding him cheap. So we also see in this instance, Kathy is not marginalized. I mean, she experiences sexism, so I guess that's a form of it, but she also is experiencing proximity to whiteness, being a white person, and having privilege there, and also class, especially, how that informs most of the conditions. That Linton has proximity to whiteness and a title. He also is male, but him exhibiting what they view as more feminine attributes. He may be queer, he may be trans or non-binary, if we're taking a queer reading of this. He also is sick a lot, so deals with chronic illness, disabled, most likely, and how Kathy and Linton bond over their marginalization of another person. How it is perpetuating the same systems of marginalization and getting people who normally you would think, if they experience marginalization or discrimination, that they would want to stand up for people who also experience this. But how one of the biggest tools of oppression is by getting people who are oppressed to want to continue to oppress other people that they view as below them, that it is continuing the problem. Okay. Which is why we need class solidarity, and all marginalized people need to stand together, and we don't need to be fighting all the time. Okay. We stayed till afternoon. I could not tear Miss Cathy away before, but happily my master had not quitted his apartment, and remained ignorant of our prolonged absence. As we walked home, I would fain have enlightened my charge on the characters of the people we had quitted, but she got it into her head that I was prejudiced against them. "Aha!" she cried. "You take Papa's side, Ellen. You are partial. I know, or else you wouldn't have cheated me so many years into the notion that Linton lived a long way from here. I'm really extremely angry. Only, I'm so pleased I can't show it, but you must hold your tongue about my uncle. He's my uncle, remember, and I'll scold Papa for quarreling with him. And so she ran on, till I dropped endeavoring to convince her of her mistake. She did not mention the visit that night, because she did not see Mr. Linton. The next day it all came out, sadly to my chagrin, and still I was not altogether sorry. I thought the burden of directing and warning would be more efficiently borne by him than me, but he was too timid in giving satisfactory reasons for his wish that she should shun connection with the household of the Heights. And Catherine liked good reasons for every restraint that harassed her petted will. "Papa," she exclaimed after the morning's salutations, "guess whom I saw yesterday in my walk on the moors? Oh, Papa, you started! You've not done right, have you now? I saw... But listen, and you shall hear how I found out. And Ellen, who is in league with you, and yet pretended to pity me, so when I kept hoping... Wait, what? Oh, you shall hear how I found you out. That was the phrase I missed. That's very operative. And Ellen, who is in league with you, and yet pretended to pity me so when I kept hoping and was always disappointed about Linton's coming back. She gave a faithful account of her excursion on its consequences, and my master, though he cast more than one reproachful look at me, said nothing, till she had concluded. Then he drew her to him and asked if she knew why he had concealed Linton's near neighborhood from her. Could she think it was to deny her a pleasure that she might harmlessly enjoy? "It was because you disliked Mr. Heathcliff," she answered. "Then you believe I care more for my own feelings than yours, Cathy?" he said. "No, it was not because I disliked Mr. Heathcliff, but because Mr. Heathcliff dislikes me." Well, I would say that Edgar showed his dislike for Heathcliff from the jump when they met. I mean, it was kind of shared, but because Edgar is racist and classist as well. So I think Heathcliff has more of a valid reason to not like Edgar. "And it is a most diabolical man, delighting to wrong and ruin those he hates, if they give him the slightest opportunity. I knew that you could not keep up an acquaintance with your cousin without being brought into contact with him. And I knew he would detest you on my account. So, for your own good and nothing else, I took precautions that you should not see Linton again. I meant to explain this sometime as you grew older, and I'm sorry I delayed it." "But Mr. Heathcliff was quite cordial, Papa," observed Catherine, not at all convinced. "And he didn't object to our seeing each other. He said I might come to his house when I pleased, only I must not tell you because you had quarreled with him, and would not forgive him for marrying Aunt Isabella. And you won't. You are the one to be blamed. He is willing to let us be friends, at least, Linton and I, and you are not." My master, perceiving that she would not take his word for her uncle-in-law's evil disposition, gave a hasty sketch of his conduct to Isabella, and the manner in which Wuthering Heights became his property. He could not bear to discourse long upon the topic, for though he spoke little of it, he still felt the same horror and detestation of his ancient enemy that had occupied his heart ever since Mrs. Linton's death. She might have been living yet, if it had not been for him, was his constant bitter reflection, and in his eyes Heathcliff seemed a murderer. Okay, but Catherine also gave birth to Cathy, their daughter. Wouldn't you say that Edgar is more at fault for, like, being part of the reason for why she was pregnant? Anyway. Miss Cathy, conversant with no bad deeds except her own slight acts of disobedience, injustice, and passion, rising from hot temper and thoughtlessness, and repented of on the day they were committed, was amazed at the blackness of spirit that could brood on, again the racialized language, describing blackness also in proximity to immorality, and cover revenge for years, and deliberately prosecute its plans without a visitation of remorse. She appeared so deeply impressed and shocked at this new view of human nature, excluded from all her studies and all her ideas till now, that Mr. Edgar seemed it unnecessary to pursue the subject. He merely added, You will know hereafter, darling, why I wish you to avoid his house and family. Now, return to your old employments and amusements, and think no more about them." Yeah, like that's going to happen. she's been isolated forever and now knows some people. Catherine kissed her father and sat down quietly to her lessons for a couple of hours, according to the custom. Then she accompanied him into the grounds, and the whole day passed as usual. But in the evening, when she had retired to her room, and I went to help her undress, I found her crying on her knees by the bedside. "Oh, fie, silly child," I exclaimed. "If you had any real griefs, you'd be ashamed to waste a tear on this little contrariety. You never had one shadow of substantial sorrow, Miss Catherine. Suppose for a minute that Master and I were dead, and you were by yourself in the world. How would you feel then? Compare the present occasion with such an affliction as that, and be thankful for the friends you have instead of coveting more." Which, Nellie has a point. Catherine has lived a very charmed life. The daughter of Catherine, she has been very spoiled. I mean, she hasn't grown up with a mother, so, that is sad for her. But she has everything that she's ever wanted, except for some friends, because she's been isolated. So there is this class difference here that, to the time, people of the time, Nellie might have seemed like she was speaking out of turn or was being cold. But in actuality is you don't have many problems. This is your biggest problem. Okay, which makes sense. And also, when we consider how much privilege Kathy had, the young Catherine growing up, of getting everything she wanted, when she finally reaches a situation of not getting something that she wants, how devastating it is to her. Where it's we don't protect children by making it so they don't experience any sort of hardship. I mean, they shouldn't have to experience it unnecessarily, but especially for these people that are trying to essentially mold the world in their kids' image. It's okay, that doesn't work. "I'm not crying for myself, Ellen," she answered. "It's for him. He expected to see me again tomorrow, and there, he'll be so disappointed. And he'll wait for me, and I shan't come." "Nonsense," said I. "Do you imagine he has thought as much of you as you have of him? Hasn't he Hareton for a companion? Not 1 in 100 would weep at losing a relation they had just seen twice, for 2 afternoons. Linton will conjecture how it is, and subject himself no further about you." "But may I not write a note to tell him why I cannot come?" she asked, rising to her feet. "And just send these books. I promised to lend him. His books are not as nice as mine, and he wanted to have them extremely, when I told him how interesting they were. May I not, Ellen?" "No, indeed. No, indeed," replied I with decision. "Then he would write to you, and there'd never be an end of it. No, Miss Catherine, the acquaintance must be dropped entirely. So Papa expects, and I shall see that it is done." "But how can one little note," she recommenced, putting on an imploring countenance. "Silence," I interrupted. "We'll not begin with your little notes. Get into bed." She threw at me a very naughty look, so naughty that I would not kiss her good night at first. Okay. I covered her up and shut her door in great displeasure. But repenting halfway, I returned softly, and lo, there was Miss, standing at the table with a bit of blank paper before her, and a pencil in her hand, which she guiltily slipped out of sight on my re-entrance. "You'll get nobody to take that, Catherine," I said, "if you write it, and at present I shall put out your candle." I set the extinguisher on the flame, receiving as I did so a slap on my hand, and a petulant cross thing. I then quitted her again, and she drew the bolt into one of her worst, most peevish humors. The letter was finished and forwarded to its destination by a milk fetcher who came from the village, but that I didn't learn till some time afterwards. Weeks passed on, and Kathy recovered her temper, though she grew wondrous fond of stealing off to the corners by herself, and often I came near her suddenly while reading. She would start and bend over the book, evidently desirous to hide it, and I detected edges of loose paper sticking out beyond the leaves. She also got a trick of coming down early in the morning and lingering about the kitchen, as if she were expecting the arrival of something. And she had a small drawer in a cabinet in the library which she would trifle over for hours, whose key she took special care to remove when she left it. One day, as she inspected this drawer, I observed that the playthings and trinkets, which recently formed its contents, were transmuted into bits of folded paper. My curiosity and suspicions were roused. So they are continuing a correspondence, from what it sounds like. I determined to take a peep at her mysterious treasures, so at night, as soon as she and my master were safe upstairs, I searched and readily found among my house keys one that would fit the lock. Having opened, I emptied the whole contents into my apron and took them with me to examine at leisure in my own chamber. Though I could not but suspect, I was still surprised to discover that they were a mass of correspondence, daily almost, it must have been, from Mr. Linton Heathcliff, answers to documents forwarded by her. The earlier dated were embarrassed and short. Gradually, however, they expanded into copious love letters, foolish as the age of the writer rendered natural. Just like invading her privacy, reading all of these letters, but also being like, yeah, they're just juvenile teenagers in love. Yet with touches here and there, which I thought were borrowed from a more experienced source. Some of them struck me as singularly odd compounds of ardor and flatness. Okay. Commencing in strong feeling and concluding in the affected, wordy way that a schoolboy might use to a fancied, incorporeal sweetheart. Whether they satisfied Kathy, I don't know, but they appeared very worthless trash to me. Okay, Nellie. After turning over as many as I thought proper, I tied them— None of it's proper, Nellie, to be spying in this way. I tied them in a handkerchief and set them aside, relocking the vacant drawer. Following her habit, my young lady descended early and visited the kitchen. I watched her go to the door on the arrival of a certain little boy, and while the dairymaid filled his can, she tucked something into his jacket pocket and plucked something out. I went round by the garden and laid wait for the messenger, who fought valorously to defend his trust, and we split the milk between us. But I succeeded in abstracting the epistle, and threatening serious consequences if he did not look sharp home. I remained under the wall, so threatening the poor milk boy. He's like, I'm just trying to make money. I'm just trying to do my job. I don't care about all of this, the class drama happening right now. I remained under the wall and perused Miss Kathy's affectionate composition. It was more simple and more eloquent than her cousin's, very pretty and very silly. I shook my head and went meditating into the house. The day being wet, she could not divert herself with rambling about the park, so at the conclusion of her morning studies, resorted to the solace of the drawer. Her father sat reading at the table, and I, on purpose, had sought a bit of work in some unripped fringes of the window curtain, keeping my eye steadily fixed on her proceedings. Never did any bird flying back to a plundered nest, which it had left brimful of chirping young ones, express more complete despair in its anguished cries and flutterings than she by her single, "Oh!" and the change that transfigured her late happy countenance. Mr. Linton looked up. "What is the matter, love? Have you hurt yourself?" he said. His tone and look assured her he had not been the discoverer of the hoard. "No, Papa," she gasped. Ellen, come upstairs. I'm sick." I obeyed her summons and accompanied her out. "Oh, Ellen, you have got them," she commenced immediately, dropping on her knees when we were enclosed alone. "Oh, give them to me, and I'll never do so again. Don't tell Papa. You've not told Papa, Ellen. Say you have not. I've been exceedingly naughty, but I won't do it any more." With a grave severity in my manner, I bid her stand up. "So," I exclaimed, "Miss Catherine, you are tolerably far on, it seems. You may well be ashamed of them. A fine bundle of trash you study in your leisure hours, to be sure." Nellie's just interfering. I mean, she's trying to protect her from the fate of, being bound to Heathcliff more, but seems like Heathcliff is treating her better than most people, so... Anyway... "Why, it's good enough to be printed. And what do you suppose the master will think when I display it before him? I haven't shown it yet, but you needn't imagine I shall keep your ridiculous secrets. For shame. And you must have led the way in writing such absurdities. He would not have thought of beginning, I'm certain. I didn't, sobbed Kathy, fit to break her heart. I didn't once think of loving him till... Loving? Cried I, as scornfully as I could utter the word. Loving? Did anybody ever hear the like? I might just as well talk of loving the miller who comes once a year to buy our corn. Pretty loving indeed. And both times together you have seen Linton hardly 4 hours in your life. Now here is the babyish trash. I'm going with it to the library, and we'll see what your father says to such loving. Nellie is a rat. Nellie's a narc. She's spraying at her precious epistles, but I held them above my head, and then she poured out further frantic entreaties that I would burn them, do anything rather than show them. And being really fully as inclined to laugh as scold, for I esteemed it all girlish vanity, I at length relented in a measure and asked, If I consent to burn them, will you promise faithfully neither to send nor receive a letter again, nor a book, nor I perceive have you sent him books, nor locks of hair, nor rings, nor playthings? We don't send playthings, cried Catherine, her pride overcoming her shame. Nor anything at all then, my lady, I said. Unless you will, here I go. I promise, Ellen, she cried, catching my dress. Oh, put them in the fire. Do. When I proceeded to open a place with the poker, the sacrifice was too painful to be borne. She earnestly supplicated that I would spare her 1 or 2. 1 or 2, Ellen, to keep for Linton's sake? I unknotted the handkerchief and commenced dropping them in from an angle, and the flames curled up the chimney. I will have 1, you cruel wretch, she screamed, darting her hand into the fire and drawing forth some half-consumed fragments at the expense of her fingers. Very well, and I will have some to exhibit to Papa, I answered, shaking back the rest into the bundle and turning anew to the door. She emptied her blackened pieces into the flames and motioned me to finish the immolation. It was done. I stirred up the ashes and interred them under a shovel full of coals, and she mutely, and with a sense of intense injury, retired to her private apartment. So what Natalie, what Nellie is doing right now is only going to encourage Catherine's interest in Linton, from what I'm guessing. Now he's even more forbidden, and now she has even more of a grievance of them being separated. I descended to tell my master. The young lady's qualm of sickness was almost gone, but I judged it best for her to lie down a while. She wouldn't dine, but she reappeared at tea, pale and red about the eyes, and marvelously subdued in outward aspect. Next morning, I answered the letter by a slip of paper. Inscribed, Master Heathcliff is requested to send no more notes to Miss Linton, as she will not receive them. And thenceforth, the little boy came with vacant pockets. Okay, that's the end of chapter 7. All right. That's going to be it for me today. Thanks for being here. It was great chatting with you all. Thank you for correcting me and not understanding what you were talking about with the protests. Land back. Indigenous rights. Okay. I hope you have a good rest of your day, your evening, and I will see you sometime soon. Okay, bye.